Good morning, everybody. Today we are beginning with our presentations of semester two students. Today they are going to make presentations on 20th century literature, the literature which was by and large published during or between two world wars. We are living in a time where also almost on the verge of next world war, the world is standing. And that makes very interesting to see that how 20th century literature, which was written around both the world wars from 1914 to 1918 and then 1939 to 1945, gives us an interesting message regarding our times also. Though we are standing 100 years ahead of that time, let us see what students have to present in context of the literary text that they have selected. To read the topics which are going to be presented today, we will have first Aditya Raj making presentation on the divine withdrawal, God's silence as a response to human crisis in Yeats's poetry, The Second Coming. Chetna's will be on modernist ruins and planetary crisis, the Wasteland, Eco-Modernism, and the poetics of environmental catastrophe in the Anthropocene. Rudra's will be on mythic method and modern fragmentation in the Wasteland. Shivani will make it on the urban necropolis, the Wasteland as a study of Thanatos. In last two topics by Rudra and Shivani, the Wasteland is the full title. So capital T will come with the, and for Shivani's, the Wasteland should be in single inverted comma or it should be italicized as it is the title of the poem. DIMPAL DABHI will make it on fragments and frequencies, navigating cultural wastelands in modern literature and media. Milan will make on Virginia Woolf as feminist modernism, reimagining gender identity and narrative. Dimple Parmar will make it on androgyny, gender performance, and the fluidity of identity in Orlando, a biography by Virginia Woolf. Divya DABHI will make a presentation on time, history, and non-linear narration in modernist fiction, Virginia Woolf's Orlando, a biography. Jaipal will be on the alchemy of the self, blurring gender genre in Virginia Woolf's Orlando. Sandeep Kumar Jethwa will make it on the role of love and relationships in Orlando. Orlando is the text, so either make it italicized or in single inverted comma. Otherwise, it seems to be like a character. Sajad on gender, time, and feminist historiography in Virginia Woolf's Orlando. Hiralba Jadeja on dreams, class, and social mobility, the comparative study of The Great Gatsby and The White Tiger. Jency on the architect of the myth, Nick Carraway's narrative unreliability. Khushi as presentation will be on the aristocracy of the jazz age, a comparative character study of old money and new money. Nancy will be on sound, power, and illusion, a cultural study of jazz and modern identity in The Great Gatsby. Bhargavi will make it on The Great Gatsby, myth, individualism, and the American dream. And finally, Riddhis will be on the relationship between dreams, illusion, and social class in American society. So let us start with the first presentation by Aditya Raj.
Hello. Hello everyone. My name is ADITYARAJSINH GOHIL, and my today's topic is the divine withdrawal, God's silence as a response to a human crisis in Yeats' poetry. So, today I will discuss about the Yeats' poetry, The Second Coming. It was written in 1919. This is my academic details and presentation details. This is the table of content which on I will present today. This is my research question that in the poem The Second Coming, is God silent because he has abandoned humans, or is it because the universe moves in a giant mechanical cycle that human cannot change? My hypothesis is I believe that Yet does not see God's silence as a bad thing or a proof that God isn't real. Instead, he sees it like a clock, just as a clock must move from one hour to the next. Yet believes history moves in giant spiral called gyre. When the spiral gets too wide, the center cannot hold the human, and human lose touch with the divine. Therefore, the silence isn't a choice by God. It is just a natural part of how the universe works. Who built the house of one who built the sky? This is from our Gujarati Kavi named Kavi Dulabhaya Kag that I have taken this quote from. That Akash ne ghadnarana ghar ghada kone heshe. This is quote from there, and I have compared this with the Yeats poetry, that there is a God silence, and in this we can see that what God has created in this world and the transformation from what He has created, and we want to see what he has created and how. The silence that defends Yeats' poem emerges in World War's vague civilization, demanding theological reckoning. Central inquiry. When civilization fractures, does God withdraws? Like here we can see the question that who has built this house? The question on God's existence. On other side, the yet question the God silence. Why God is silent even though there are so many chaos going into this world? And there he Dulabaka get the quote that Brahmand ma bhatki rahi ante mati atki rahi. That the idea of God, I have tried to find it, but I have no answer of it. That's why I have stopped to think about it. And the Yet told that there is a silence in God, and I have no answer. Does God exist or not? I cannot say truly. The left zone, mythical and poetic, yet divine absence as a cosmic cycle, the gyre current age, structurally beyond divine redemption. Central zone, scientific and atheist. The simplest explanation is that there is no God, laws of physics preclude a creator. Right zone, philosophical and skeptical. Belief must rest on rational ground. The first cause argument collapse. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Here background you can see the picture of gyre. Gyre, when you can connect it with the W.B. Yeats poem, like there is a mention of gyre, widening gyre. Here I have mentioned that the falcon cannot hear the falconer, so divine human convent. The gyre at its terminal edge, past and the point of divine correction. Mere anarchy, the anthropic residue, the collapse order, bloom dim tide, oceanic systematic violence, structure abandonment, creamery of innocence, down ritual no longer affections. Like here we can see the God's part in the word, that why God is not there even though there is so much bloodshed, and why our as a human we cannot hear the God's voice, like Jesus says love thy neighbor. Why we cannot follow his path? The widening gyre, a cosmology of abandonment, a vision, history as a interlocking gyre, each age spiral unique central despairs. Current gyre at a maximum expansion, greatest disorder before a counter gyre. The divine structurally locked out of this historical moment. Temporal theism, God existence at a cycle of other and crisis of timing, no, not theology. Here we can see that the gyre, as I explained in the first slide, that gyre is a thing which narrow from its beginning, and it is widening from its end. Like we can see that at the end it cannot hold its center. That's why it become broader, and then it loses control from the gyre. The God existence. What does silence say about God? Is omnipotent. God witnesses suffering without intervention. The theological implication are served. The first cause argument regress. Infinite divine benevolence collapses under atrocity. I cannot feel the Christ stand quite as high as some other men. No to history, moral relation. The blood dim tide, extra, exactly the suffering that constitute evidence against the benevolent intervening God. Silence is equal to evidence against God versus silence is equal to structural absence, a crucial distinction. Like in the war, there is a God is silent, because if there is a God, here Yeats says that if there is a God, he has do something. Like there are so many wars happening in our current situation, like Israel versus Iran, and America attacking the Iran, uh, Hamas and Israel. There are so many wars are going on. Even though the God is silent, if God is there, then why he is silent? Silent. Is there anything is happening to the world? Is there new beginning will come? There is no God. Science and the self-sufficient universe, law of the nature, gravity, thermodynamic, quantum mechanism, sufficient to explain the universe without a creator. Here we can see that the first argument is about there is no God, there is only science, quantum mechanics, and all that. We are created because of the Big Bang. There is a theory of science, the theory of evolution, Charles Darwin, that we are came from the apes, the monkeys. Who built this house? Of the one who built the sky? Here is the question from the Kak's poetry. Who builds this house? I don't know who built this house and why and how builds he house. And here we can see the question like why God is silent. Yeah, even though there are so many wars are going on, so many people are killed by others. Why God is silent? Series design system. What rough beast in our come round at last, slow towards Bethlehem to be born. This is the quote or the line from the W.B.Yeats poetry. Slochis mean anti-messianic verb, no divine stride, only bestial indifferent crawl. The Sphinx, blank and the pitiless, gaze echoes divine, indifferent to the human suffering. The rough beast, the mechanical, next phase of the gyre, terrifying because impersonal. Like here we can see the image of the rough beast. How? What is that rough beast? Rough beast is like a lion face. I have put the image of the Egyptian statue, that there is a rough beast face as a lion and body as a human. That beast is emerging from because of this war and because of the God silence. Mysticism as a method. Why yet refuses scientific silence? Yet committed occult, occultist, theopetist, hermetic order to the golden dawn. Mysticism as a rigorous epistemology, not irrational sentiment. The unanswered theology, divine silence as a moral failure. Theodicy, reconciled God's godness with the suffering, is the theological wound at the heart of the poem. The silence is the answer. Surely some revelation is at the hand. The gaze blank, the pitiless as the sun, moving it slowly tight. This is the quote from W.B. Yeats' poem. Conclusion: the evidence in the slides prove that hypothesis that divine silence in the Yeats' poetry is the mechanical necessity of his gyre cosmology, rather than a sign that God has simply abandoned humanity. By viewing history as a series of interlocking spirals that must expand until the center cannot hold, yet shows that the current era of crisis and the bloom dimmed violence is a structural lockout where the divine is temporarily out of the reach. Like we can see the whole poetry of W.B. Yeats, the second coming, based on a war and why the on the God's silence. Here is my references. Thank you. Is there any question?
So, Aditya, how is the Gujarati poet Kak's view different from its?
So while both poets reach a point where the mind finally halted before the divine, Kak feels contemplative awe, the scared wound, yet on the other hand feels the apocalyptic dread and terror. This is the difference between the both poetry. That like Kag is questioning the divine world and the divine things that God has created, and other side yet is questioning the existence on the God silence. Why God is silent and why he is not doing anything, and why that's why the rough beast will come.
God is silent. Does that mean Yeats was atheist?
No. Unlike Stephen Hawking or Richard Dawkins, yet believe in the spiritual reality. He shows silence not as a god non-existence, but as a structural phase where the divine is temporary out of the reach. Here we can see that the god is temporarily out of the war because there is something new is coming. The change will come in the world, like a new beast is emerging which has lion face and a human body. Thank you.
Hello everyone, myself Chetnabein. Today I am going to present on modernist ruins and the planetary crisis, the wasteland, eco-modernism, and the poetics of environmental catastrophe in the Anthropocene. This is my academic information as well as presentation information. Table of contents. My research question is, how does the wasteland, through its modernist poetic of fragmentation, symbolic landscape, intertextuality, and the urban images, represent the interconnected crisis of the environment, culture, and the psychology, and anticipate the conditions of the Anthropocene? How does an eco-modernist framework reinterpret these formal strategies as the expressions of the human environment, entanglement, ecological grief, and the planetary consciousness, and how are these concerns extended, transformed, or the critique in the contemporary climate fiction? Hypothesis is this study hypothesized that the wasteland, through its modernist poetic of the fragmentations, urban ruins, intertextuality, and the symbolic environment imagery, not only reflect early 20th century culture crisis but also they anticipate the conditions of the anthropogenesis by articulating the human environment, entanglement, ecological instability, and the planetary crisis. Furthermore, when interpreted through an eco-modernist framework, this formal strategy reveals the modernism as an early mode of the planetary consciousness whose ecological imaginations is extant, reconfined, and the critical engage in the enduring relevance of the modernist poetics and the understanding and the responding to the environmental catastrophe. Situating modernism in the Anthropocene. Modernist literature emerged from the profound historical, technological, and the cultural upheaval, reflecting the systematic crisis while anticipating the environmental and the planetary concern. In the Westland, Eliot present fragmented urban landscapes, polluted rivers, and the barren wastelands, functioning as the both metaphors of the culture disintegrations and the early ecological critique. Eliot's modernist techniques anticipate literature's ability to map human environmental entanglement, positioning form medium for the planetary awareness and the ecological ethics. Theoretical framework. The eco-modernism as the methodological approach, analytic focus of the material ecology, and the interdisciplinary and the planetary framework. In the eco-modernism, integrates the modernist literary techniques with the ecological theory, treating fragmentation, monet, and the intertextuality as the methodological tools for the representing planetary crisis. Analytic focus on the material ecology that analyze the symbolic landscape and the ethical engagement as a reflective of the human environment, entanglement, and the ecological consciousness. It combines eco-critical, post-colonial, and the anthropologist literary scholarship, situating the wasteland within the ethical planetary discourses and providing the framework for the contemporary literary analysis. Fragmentations and the environmental symbolism. In the literary representations of ruins and the decay, like narrative fragmentations mirror the cultural and the ecological collapses, offering a formal analogy for the anthroponesis. The poem's formal disjunctions itself enact the planetary destabilization, showing that the literary structure models ecological consciousness. Urban wasteland and the planetary memory. Urban spaces in the wasteland, such as the London, evoke the industrial and the ecological degradations, reflecting the human imprints on the planetary system. Planetary memory, preserving the ecological awareness and the ethical reflections across the time, encourages the intergenerational responsibility. Contemporary parallel. Ballad's high-rise dramatized urban and the environmental collapses, echoing Eliot's modernist wasteland. Material ecology. In the wasteland, material ecology in the game of the chase reveals the interconnected domestic, urban, and the natural environment. Objects in the landscape acts as the ethical signifiers, meditating human accountability for the environmental degradation. Contemporary example like Atwood's Oryx and Craig extend Eliot's explorations into the speculative ecological collapses, how human actions decay and the crisis of the environmental, connecting the literary form with the planetary stakes. Ecological grief and the anthropocene effect, like their fragmented voice in the barren landscape, especially in the burial of the dead, evoke the ecological grief, highlighting the human despair and the ethical responsibility. Eliot anticipates the modern climate consciousness, demonstrating literature's capacity to evoke the effective responses to the planetary crisis. This also reflects form of the slow environmental violence and delayed the ecological crisis. Contemporary, like the King Swallows the Flight behaviors, dramatize the climate-induced psychological and the social impact, continuing the modernist strategy of the ecological effect. Nowadays, climate fiction is very much significant and very popular nowadays, like the Don't Look Up, which is a non-fictional movie, and the Great Flood. It is also, we can connect with the Anthropocene effect. Anti-realism and the environmental critic. Nature is the symbolic and the ethical terrain. How anti-realism merits the literary form and ethical reflection, creating the space for engagement with the anthropocenic realities. Ghosh, the Great Dangerment, uses the symbolic landscape to the critic climate denial and the social apathy. Climate of the history and the literary imagination, like the literature situate human agency within the planetary and the key temporal frameworks, offering the critic insight into the anthroponic studies. Planetary memories and the literary continuity, how from modernist ruins to the literary memory, ethical engagement and the environmental awareness, eco-modernist continuity. The picture is very much significant from the wasteland, the fragmentations and mortgage, urban wasteland, ecological grief and the intertextuality and the networks. Contemporary relevance, like the powers, the overstreet, interconnected ecological narratives, King Slover's flight behavior, the climate adaptations and the human defect, and the Ghosh, Amitav Ghosh, the great derangement, the social denial for the climate crisis. Methodology and analytic approaches, like the comparative analysis with the contemporary text, examine the parallel between the Eliot's works and contemporary literary texts to uncover shared ethical concern affecting the responses and the representations of the Anthropocenes. Modernist technique, eco-modernist technique, and the contemporary examples. Intertextuality and the modernist networks. Contemporary pairs like the powers, the overstreet and the Ghosh, the great derangement, uses the intertextuality references to situate the ecological narratives within the historical and the mythical framework. Ethics and pedagogical implications. If the wasteland exposes readers to the social, psychological, and the ecological fragmentation, encouraging the reflections on the human action and their consequences. Future directions and interdisciplinary potential. If eco-modernist scholarship encourages the interdisciplinary research combining the literary studies, environmental science, and philosophy and the climate ethics. Like the contemporary literature demonstrate that the modernist insight remain relevant, providing framework for the resilience, adaptations, and ethical imaginations in the Anthropocene. This is the synthesis of my presentation. Eliot's The Wasteland demonstrate how fragmentation, urban raids, and the ecological imagery illuminate the complex relationship between the humans and the environment. Eco-modernism builds on the foundations, bridges modernist aesthetics with the ethical reflection, and showing the clear continuity with the contemporary literature. This is my learning outcome. I have learned that the wasteland is not just about the history. It is actually a very early warning about how humans are damaged the earth. I now see that the broken and the messy style of the Eliot's poetry is the perfect match for the broken and unstable environment of our modern world. I have learned to link Eliot's ideas to the modern books like the Amita Ghosh, The Great Derangement, and the Margaret Atwood's The Oryx and Craigs. I now believe that the reading and studying literature is a powerful way to help people care more about the protecting our future. This is my reference which I have used, and thank you so much. If anyone have any question. Why should monist is
So, Chetna, my question is, why should we read a modernist poem like The Wasteland in today's climate crisis?
the wasteland is very much significant and relevant to today's, because in today's time we are facing climate change, sudden climate change, unseasonable rains, and there are the we also gave the reason to the nature to give back to us because of the in the west end we know the crisis of culture and the crisis of the morality. It's also connected with the nature elements like the barren land, the west barren land, and the unfertile land. So it is very much significant and relevant to nowadays. We also recently experienced that the storm and unseasonable rain. So we can also through the eco-modernist lens we can also interpret it and understood the wasteland as a environmental perspective.
So, Chetna, my question is, do you think the wasteland is more about the spiritual crisis or an environmental crisis?
The wasteland is primary about the spiritual and the cultural crisis, but in the lens of the ecology and the anthropocene, if we if we in this perspective if we saw, then we can connect the both the things, cultural crisis and the environmental crisis. Eliot uses the unstable, the barren world, the barren land, wasteland, unfertile land, the polluted river Thames. So if we connected in the cultural crisis, people who are lose of morality, and nowadays it is also connected with the environmental crisis. Now people are still very much don't know about the actions that it gives you the reason to nature back give to you at the entrepreneurs and the catastrophic. We also experience this all these things in nowadays, so it is very relevant and significant. So thank you so much. This is from my side.
Wait. Wait. I think he's connecting the sound system. No, this sound now it is coming. His sound might not be coming. That's it. Done. Okay, you can start.
So Wasteland is a poem by T.S. Eliot published in 1922, talks about the cultural, spiritual and psychological disintegration of modern Europe. However, Eliot does not merely depict chaos. Instead, he organized fragmentation through what he famously termed as the mythic method. By employing ancient myth, fertility rituals and archetypal figures, Eliot provides a structure and symbolic framework for both mirroring and modern fragmentation. So, first of all, from where T.S. Eliot inspired to use the mythic method. So, Eliot read two books. First is the Jesse Westerns From Ritual to Romance, and second is the James Fraser's The Golden Bough. Eliot constructs a framework based on fertility myth, particularly the Fisher King myth. This myth provides a cyclical pattern of death and rebirth, which contrasts with the apparent spiritual sterility of the modern world. Rather than presenting myth as decorative and illusion, Eliot uses as an organized principle that blinds the poem's fragments into symbolical unity. Now, myth and ritual both has a structural framework. So, critique argues that the Wasteland should not be read as random fragmentation, but as a dense, symbolical, and a system rooted in myth and ritual. And the Wasteland become not merely a modern cityscape, but a symbolic terrain reflecting and the myth pattern of infertility awaiting regeneration. So now, fragmentation as the modern condition. Modern fragmentation in the poem appears through shifting speakers, multiple languages, and broken narratives and abrupt transitions. These formal descriptions mirror the fractual consciousness of the post-war society. However, Eliot fragmentation is deliberate and controlled. Now, Tiresias and the mythic unity, because Tiresias is the central figure in the poem and who watches all the event throughout the poem. So Tiresias from the Greek mythology serves as a central unifying figure in the poem. Though the poem presents multiple voices, Eliot identifies Tiresias as the consciousness that connects them all. As a mythic figure who embodies both male and female experience, Tiresias transcends individual fragmentation and represent continuity across the time. Now, myth versus meaninglessness. How Eliot serves myth as meaningless in this poem. So, while poem depicts despair, its mythic structure suggests the possibility of renewal. The closing section, what the thunder says, which is the fifth part of poem, invokes the Eastern philosophy from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, in which chapter number 5, given the shloka that Dadeti dadami iti aha, dayadvam iti dayam iti, damyata iti damam. So the three things, datta, dayadvam and damyata, which combine as a dadetam traya shikshat, dattam dayadvam damyata. These three things combine with the word shantihi. So the ending does not revolve fragmentation, but gestures toward spiritual reconciliation. Eliot's mythical method thus provides not certainty, but a framework through which modern chaos can be interrupted and endured. So last, let's conclude this presentation by saying that in the Wasteland, modern fragmentation and mythical order coexist in the dynamic tension. Eliot's mythical method does not eliminate chaos. Instead, it frames it within universal pattern of myth and ritual. The poem's enduring power lies in this balance between broken modern reality and the timelessness structures of myth. So here is my learning outcome, and here are the references. So anyone have any questions, so you can ask.
So, according to you, Rudra, which ancient myth is most central to the poem structure?
Okay, Aditya. So basically, and the central myth of the Westland is about the Fisher King, which is from the Grail legend. And not according to me, but according to every critic, it is a central myth in the Westland. Now, any other question?
So, Rudra, my question is why the Grail legend is central to the mythic structure of the Westland by T.S. Eliot?
Okay, so Grail legend is a like a 10th or 9th century AD legend story, which Eliot fragments in this poem in a not very specific way, but in a meaningful way. That from the uh, dryness and lifelessness to the modern faith regeneration, and he uses a figure of Fisher King, whose land is become completely destroyed by because of his wound, and one of the Grail legend has to find a holy grail so he can renewal. So this meaning or the this Grail narrative is adapted by T.S. Eliot in this poem in the throughout the giving messages of birth, regeneration from the dryness and dead land. Okay, thank you so much everyone.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shivani DEGDA, and today I deal with the topic the urban necropolis, the Wasteland as a study of Thanatos. Here is my academic and presentation details. This is the table of contents. And my research question is how does T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland illustrate Freud's death drive Thanatos through its urban environment, paid rituals, and modern neuroses? And my hypothesis would be the poem portrays a post war civilization so burdened by history that Eros is crushed by Thanatos. This manifesto as walking death in unreal city, failed rebirth in water, and psychic wasteland, conditions that persist and intensify in 2020s through digital alienation, climate anxiety, and identity fragmentation. Now about introduction. The Wasteland is not merely a poem about drought or post-World War effect. It is a civilization subconsciously begging to die, exhausted by the burden of history and the trauma of mechanized war. And we can connect the Wasteland with Sigmund Freud's theory of Thanatos and battle eros, where eros refer memory, desire, sex, creation. On the other hand, thanatos reflect silence, stillness, forgetfulness, and extinction. Eliot's fragmented voices, a sterile landscape, and walking corpses diagnose a society that craves the peace of the inorganic. The lack of water is symbolic of a deeper spiritual psychological drought. Imagine the modern city as the necropolis, not dead but undead, scrolling and breathing yet already undone by death. The cruel spring, Freudian conflict. Uh, it starts with April is the cruelest month, breeding liligas out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stealing dull roots with spring rain. So mostly April is represent as the new birth, new life, desire of life. But here April is the cruelest, because we have to, April is forces us to feel past and feel to desire, and spring forces life, memory, and desire onto world that prefer forgetful snow. The inhabitants are not victims of death, they crave it. World War First trauma has made living painful. They long for burial in silence. Civilization is tired of its own history. The burden is too heavy. Better to stay buried. The Unreal City, urban sociology plus eco-criticism. It starts with Unreal City. Under the brown fog of winter dawn, a crowd flowed over London Bridge. So many. I had not thought death had undone so many. So here is the London Bridge, where everyone walking, and it represent individual. They cannot able to find the individual self, walking like machines. So how we can connect with it is in an eco-critical way. If the human beings are empty, then nature is also being empty. This is urban necropolis, a factory producing walking dead. The brown fog is here representation, represent confusion, complexity, death by water. A current, a current under sea pickled his bones in whisper. As he rose and fell, he passes the stages of his age and youth, entering the whirlpool. Water is represent rebirth, renewal. On the other hand, here Flabel just loses his life, even loses his memory also. Flabel forget the cry of girls, total erase of identity, the ultimate goal of Thanatos. Flabel drowns in the whirlpool. Identity erase, no rebirth. Contemporary relevance, digital walking dead, the new unreal city. Eliot's London Bridge crowd is equal to today's doom, scrolling masses. Our the new unreal cities, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, we scrolling endlessly. We scroll through an endless wasteland of information, feeling the same exhaustion and burden of history. The unreal city is now the infinite feed. Just as Eliot's ghosts flowed to work, we flow through algorithms, disconnected, ghostly, craving silence. And second is ecological thanatos. Eliot's daylight under, thunder without rain and cracked earth is equal to literal 2020's reality. Eco anxiety as a modern death drive. The poem predicts climate crisis and global warming. Humanity has exhausted the planet. The world itself seems to be begging to die. The wasteland is no longer metaphor. It is headline news. Today we can see the increasing of industrial life, okay, and increasing of urban life. On the other end, when we see the we lose greenery, and that's why day by day we feel heat, and it increase anxiety. The crisis of identity, fragmentation of self. In the age of AI, deep fakes, the unreal quality is amplified. We when face melt and voices are cloned. We can see the several self side of everyone. Contemporary relevance D, urban extension. Dhaka is the new unreal city. 90.84 million people, polluted rivers, moral, spiritual sterility, rising suicide, exact mirror of Eliot's London. And in conclusion, the wasteland remains the definite diagnosis of civilization grown so heavy with its own history that it now walks, scroll, and burns toward the peace of the inorganic. Eliot end with the Upanishadic triad, Datta, Devadam, and Damyata, which refers uh, give and control yourself, uh, and end with Shanti through digital detox, climate action, or authentic selfhood. The poem is not historical, it is prophetic. Our task is to recognize the necropolis and choose whether to let Thanatos win. Here is my references. Any question?
Shivani. So my question is, how does modern technology create fragmentation of identity in Westland?
In nowadays we cannot able to uh, uh, we cannot able to understand what is her he or his or him true self. We can see best version or happy version in social way. On the other end, maybe he or she feels sad, and we can see a formal self in workplace. So we can see here technology create fragmentation of identity in several way. We cannot find a true self.
So, Shivani, my question is, how can people find their true selves?
People can find their true self sitting alone away from social media and try to observe that what makes him or his or her truly happy by honest being with herself. Thank you, that's it from my side.
So, hello everyone, myself Dimple DABHI, and I am dealing with this topic fragment and frequency navigating the cultural wastelands of literature and media. Then, here is my academic information. Okay. Here is my academic information. Then, this is my research question. How do tensions between creative chaos and editorial control explained by T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound's collaboration reflect broader struggle between artistic integrity, media production, and the uh, prioritization of mass appeal in modern cultural industries. Then hypothesis: cultural wastelands arise from a lack of purpose, and structure recovery requires collaboration effort toward a unified meaningful framework and beyond profit of fragmentation. Then here is my table of content. Then introduction. The dual wasteland. This presentation bridges two wastelands. The 1922 modernist masterpiece by T.S. Eliot and a vast wasteland of American television identified by Newton Minow in 1961, the common thread. Then both work address cultural fragmentation to breakdown of communication and the role of editors or regulators in shaping public discourse. Then context. We explain how edits po- poetry was could by Ezra Pounds and how Minow adjusts television still similar corrective and shift toward a public interest. Then psychoanalysis and modernist collaboration and Wasteland. The foundation psychoanalysis was born from male collaboration focus on the female subject. Then literary mirrors. The Wasteland follows its paradigm. T.S. Eliot provided the chaos, will Ezra Pound provided curative edits. Then the Pound and editor can bond as a man because the previous and documentation discontinues text to be female. Hysteria, healing, and the masculine crafting of modernism. Pound as a midwife to Eliot's verse. Then definition of symptoms. Hysteria involves a foundational disorganization of speech and mimicking the poem's primitive of bubble. Then transformation, pound transformation, Eliot fragments into the hard and powerful, the moment of the modernism. Then Isra pounds the clinical role. The Eliot view the poet as the of the oppressed by a burden, and pound act as a midwife to the Catherine birthday. Then professional brotherhood. The collaboration created a minded and critical companions. Then the work from the poetry for ladies. Then domestic hysteria and modernism erased. Then shaped pathology, and Eliot's marriage was defined by shade the nervous. Then we will famously started as to Tom's mind and I am his mind. Then Tringle, the pound managed both of hysteria and the hysterical wife will the Alice was the treatment. Then misogyny is common ground to validate the poem as a moment, then away from female and symptoms of emotional, and then moment of the male modernism propaganda. Then from vast to vaster and media expansion paradox. The 1961 Literacy Minov labeled television a vast wasteland using a focus on public interest. Then paradox of choice. 13 years later, more channels did not the better equality and the audience. Then reach the TV seats and tripled to 172 million and 1990. Then daily viewing rose from 2 hours, and then cable evaluations. Then market value of cable eventually suppose traditional television. Then toaster myth, and Minov reject to view that TV is merely toaster with picture, then market will perfect. Then violence by age 18, a chill scene. Then importance of institutions. The television is American primary educated at its potential, and it is often to vast. Then example, the civil war is a serious provided viewers will invest time in learning if the content is stitching. Then media's impact, children and politics in crisis. Then selling versus nurturing. In American TV is a tool for selling, not nurturing. Then soundbite culture. Candidates speak to blog. Shank from 42 seconds. Then corruption. The need to rise a week for TV ads put the hawk and special interest. Then from wasteland to structure and reforming culture and media. A call to action. The intellectual community and must stop looking down is a north and policy making. Then structural necessity. Just a pound surgery of the required to make Eliot's fragments and moments, and that requires to make TV and leading institutions. Then evaluation of modern unity. Then really new work. The Walton leads identify the wasteland and identity example of radical achievement. Then conclusion. We face a crossroad between cultural existence and renewal. The whether is a pages from poem or the glow and screen, the wasteland is not a permanent state but a result of choice. We must choose a serve and a common good over the lowest common denominator. Here is my references, and thank you. If you any questions.
Dimple, my question is, why is television considered a failure in education?
it focus more on entertainment and the profit than education content. So it's anyone.
Dimple, my question to you is, what role did Ezra Pound play in shaping the Westland?
Okay. Ezra Pound, editor and structured by T.S. Eliot. Caustic and the draft into the coherent modernist poem. So thank you. This is from my side.
Okay, by the time he gets ready, let me share a few things from the previous presentations. Okay. So this is one from ADITYARAJ. So you referred to these 3-4 sources. This one is Bertrand Russell, Richard Dawkins, and Stephen Hawkins. Okay. Now, when you cite these sources, it should directly come from that. Any quote, like for example, here you have, on this slide, you have written Hawking. So that line should be coming from that source. Now, I don't think Hawking has talked about second coming. He's not talking about second coming. So then you cannot cite in this manner. Just by putting a name in parenthesis doesn't mean you have done your work. Putting things in parenthesis, I hope you understand, yes, bracket, yeah, parenthesis. So it means you have taken a quote from that work, and from where the quote is taken, that, and then page number also you give. So if I want to verify, or any reviewer wants to see, then they will go to that page number, and then they will say, where is that quote? That's why these things are required. So here it is just a kind of a show that is made, that well, I have done my work. Parenthesis is required, so let me put it. But it doesn't serve the purpose. This is a kind of a forgery, or it is just to cheat the person. That you ask this, I do that. But I am not understanding why it is done. Why? What is the purpose of doing that? That you have to understand. Why? So that anybody who reviews wants to see whether you have cited properly, or even you read it or not. If you have read it, then you have picked up a proper quotation from the article, and then you are using. So here also in this slide also Hawking is cited, but I don't think this all things are said by Hawking. Here Dawkins is coming, but that also is similarly doubtful. Dawkins is there in all these slides, but that is not the right way to put the things. Now when you cite Kag, then you can use Gujarati lines also. From the original text, Gujarati lines. Which text? When was it published? Where was it published? No, you can't do that. If you don't know original, that is doubtful. No? Then he might not have said that. If the person has said that, how do you ascertain that? But where is he written? It might be published somewhere, no? Otherwise, how do you know? Then otherwise, how do you know? Like somebody tells that I have published this poem, but you will say that, show me your publication. When you have published, which book. You can't believe that we are not that gullible type of people that somebody says and we believe. कोई कहे कि कवि कागे हम कही कि चलो लाओ कोट पर प्रेजेंटेशन बनावी नाखिए तो क्या करू छे? That is research scholar, that is studying masters, that you doubt everything. Why we say you have to doubt? Sanshay, be a critic, question, where is it? If somebody is asking, show me. I don't believe unless you show me. So if you say nahi હું કહું છું માની લો, તો that is theology, that is not academics. એ ધર્મમાં હોય. કે બસ હું કહું છું માની લેવાનું, એમાં શ્રદ્ધા રાખો, પ્રશ્નો નહીં રાખવાના. But academics is not that. Academics is not that. That is what we time and again tell. That if you blindly believe in something, then that is theology. It's not academics. Academics means questioning everything, asking for proof. And so this process comes there. So original quote from that is necessary. It is in Gujarati. So you can put that on the slide and then you can translate also. So these few things that you have to say in others also. Everybody will not be able to pinpoint, but that doesn't mean that you are not making such errors. Okay, then Rudra's presentation. You also have cited this. So I was trying to find this MD Europe's quote, but I was not able to locate. You've written this Dar Europe here. So this means that these lines are from Europe's article. That way it tries to say, but I tried the keywords, but I cannot find it. So if you give page number, then it becomes easy for me to find. In this article, which page number it is? Yes. No. But why do you want to take oral argument? Why don't you want to take exact words? What is your logic for that? It depends upon logic. There is one idea which is written in 5 paragraphs. Then you summarize, it is okay. That which part I will quote, it will not cover the thing. So I am doing that. But if you are doing through ChatGPT, it is not fair. It is not a proper argument. You read an article, if you got one quote and that is summarizing the idea, you bring the quote. But there is no such one sentence or 3-4 sentence, because ideas are spread across articles, so you can't bring entire article. Then you summarize it, then you use phrases. But phrase comes in double inverted commas. So you write in your own manner, but phrases are taken. Jumkhao, sabdona. એ તમે એમાંથી ઉપાડતા જાઓ, શબ્દોના ઝુમખા અને એ લખતા જાઓ અને તમારી રીતે લખો એને. This all things, it will be difficult to train ChatGPT to do all these things. એ કરી શકે, એને હજી ટ્રેનિંગ આપવી પડે. પહેલા આપણે શીખી લઈએ, આમ કરવાનું છે, પછી આપણે એને ટ્રેન કરીએ તો આપણને આવો રિઝલ્ટ આપશે, નહીતર હજી નહીં આપે. એટલે these are the mechanics of writing for research and this. So that also we have to learn what are the mechanics of writing and what we do. So otherwise, if you do the things, then you are doing for the sake of doing because you are told to do, but you are not understanding why are you doing this. So if somebody will ask you second, third question, you will fail to explain that what is the purpose of citations. That itself needs to be understood. Okay? So this articles you have cited, I was trying to search from this. This is Rudra, but I was not able to get. And you also cited this share.google. Now that is not the proper link to cite. Share.google. You have taken from Internet Archive. So in the Internet Archive also you will find the source of the text. 1922 publication by Duke University Library is a collaborator. And if you get a book, then you can easily get the information from these pages. Copyright 1922, Bonnie and Live Right. And this one, New York, where it is published. So gather information from the book. This all pages gives you the introduction. And then you can say you referred on this particular website. So archive.org should be cited, not share.google. Due credit should go to the right person. Google is only helping by search engine. But if I can reach to archive people are doing tremendous work. મહેનત કોને વધુ કરી છે? archive.org. અને એને આપણે ક્રેડિટ ના આપીએ તો આપણે ડિસઓનેસ્ટી કરીએ છીએ. જેનું કામ છે એને આપણે ક્રેડિટ નથી આપી શકતા. આમાં સાઇટેશન કરવું એટલે જેનું કામ હોય એને ક્રેડિટ આપવી, એને એકનોલેજ કરવા. ધેટ ઇઝ ધ પર્પઝ. એટલે જેનું કામ હોય એને એકનોલેજ થવું જોઈએ એના સાઇટેશન દ્વારા. સો archive.org you can cite, and it is written by T.S. Eliot. So T.S. Eliot and main publication book is there. So that book should be cited. A publisher na naam પણ આવવા જોઈએ. That way you have to search and show the things. Okay, let us start the next presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Today, my presentation topic is Virginia Woolf and Feminist Modernism, Reimagining Gender Identity and Narrative. This is my academic information. Table of content. Research question. How does Virginia Woolf's modernist writing articulate a feminist critique of gender identity and narrative authority? Hypothesis. Woolf's experimental narrative technique and thematic focus on flood identity, collective challenge, partial structure, and refined feminist subjectivity. Introduction. Virginia Woolf stand one of the most influential voice in 20th century literary modernism and its early architect of feminist literary thought. As a member of Bloomsbury Group, she participated in a progressive intellectual circle that questioned Victorian norms and art, gender, and society. Thus, Woolf writing represent a powerful fusion of the aesthetic, innovation, and feminist critique, making for a foundational figure in both modernism literature and feminist theory. Feminist literary concept. In the past, women writers were often ignored or excluded from the main literary canon. Most famous writers and critics were the idea of the man made woman show the suppressed voice of woman. So literary literature become a way of women to challenge society and express their identity. Woolf feminist philosophy. Virginia Woolf strongly believed that women should be have intellectual freedom, the right to the think, right to express the idea without restriction. She argued that women were limited not because the lack of talent, but because of social economic problems such as no problem educational, no personal income, no private space to write. She also introduced the idea of mind, meaning the creative person should not think only as male or female. Through creativity comes the balance of both masculine and feminine qualities. Example text to A Room of the Oven and Three Genius. Narrative and authority. Virginia Woolf challenged the idea of a single fixed all-knowing narrator. She breaks traditional narrative authority and gives a more flexible and personal form to storytelling. Instead of telling a story not in a simple direct way, Woolf used the different modern techniques: stream of consciousness, fragmented narration, multiple perspective. This technique make a narrative feel moral, real, subjectivity, and complex rather than fixed to controlled. Gender, gender contrast, and contemporary relevance. Woolf idea were far ahead of her time. She anticipated later feminist and queer theory, which also argue that gender is not fixed but flexible. Modern thinkers believe that gender is something people perform or express, not something they are born into. Woolf's writing already suggests this idea. Orlando as feminist experiment. Orlando a biography is one of Virginia Woolf's most experimental works, where she used fiction to explore feminist idea in creativity way. The novel show gender transformation as Orlando changed from male to female without losing their inner identity. They suggest that gender is not fixed but changeable. It also explores identity across time as Orlando lives from several centuries. This shows that identity not stable involved with history and society. Orlando transformation clearly explores the social construction of gender after becoming a woman. Orlando experiment new registration and expectation, showing their gender roles are created by society, not nature. This novel also highlights inequality in culture, time, history, and identity. Virginia Woolf questioned that idea that history and inner and completely objective. She showed that history is often shaped by those power, especially of men. In Orlando biography present a historical period in built a playful way. Different century are shown through the style, mood rather than strict fact. Feminist utopian vision. Virginia Woolf imagined a world where people are not limited by strict gender roles or social experiment. Her writing suggests alternative possibility of identity, social and individual are free to define themselves. Post-Victorian feminism. Virginia Woolf represents a shift from Victorian idea about women to a more modern feminist understanding. In a Victorian period, women were expected to be quite domestic and dependent, but Woolf challenged this limit. Woolf and literary critic. Virginia Woolf not only write a novel but also act as a literary critic, questioning how literature has been shaped. She points out that many women writers were ignored and excluded excluded from the literary history and simple because they were women. Conclusion. Virginia Woolf modernist writing clearly answered the richest question by showing how literature can question gender roles, identity, and narrative authority through new experimental form. Her use of technique like stream of consciousness, fragmented narration, and multiple perspective breaks traditional storytelling and challenge who has the authority to speak. At the same time, her focus on flawed identity, changing gender roles, especially in Orlando, a biography shows that identity is not fixed but shaped by society and time. This dialectic supports the hypothesis Woolf's experimental style and theme work together, challenge partial structure and question traditional idea about gender and power. Her writing not only criticizes inequality but also creates space of new feminist idea where identity is flexible, human voice are central. This is my references and thank you.
So, how does Woolf challenge traditional narrative authority?
She used modern technique like stream of consciousness, fragmented narration, and multiple perspective to break the idea of a single fixed narrator.
Milan, my question is what is Virginia Woolf's main feminist idea?
Woolf argued that the women need to freedom, financial independence and space to express their creativity and identity. Thank you.
See, when we naturally speak, in natural conversation, there is this sound, something that you are thinking, you are organizing your words. This is a natural speech of everybody. Now, when you don't do that, it seems that it is a notanki. When you answer the question, extempore question is always answered with some hiccups, some sound, some thinking, some broken sentences. It is not grammatically correct answer. Nobody can give that. But if you give grammatically correct, perfect sentences, it is notanki. Anybody, even a child can realize that. So even if you do that, you have to act properly. You have to act and give answer as if you are genuinely giving an answer, not reading the prescripted answer. So see this. This is common sense. When you observe, you all can easily, because you are a student of literature, you have a better observation power, you deal with language, literature, so you can much deeply understand that what you are doing, what the fellow classmates are doing, and everybody can also understand the things also. So try to face the questions from whatever way it comes, and try to give an answer in a natural style rather than in a pre-programmed sentence. Always remember, nobody can give grammatically perfect sentences if suddenly something is asked to them, and you have to learn that, you have to practice that. So you learn to face questions when you deliver some speeches or you face interviews. You will never get scripted questions. So be ready to face unscripted sudden questions and see how your mind works at that moment and tries to compile the answer.
Hello everyone. Myself, Dimple Parmar, and my today's topic is androgyny, gender performance, and the fluidity of identity in Orlando, a biography by Virginia Woolf. And this is my academic information, and this is table of contents. And my research question is, how does Orlando challenge the idea of fixed gender identity? In what ways does Woolf present gender as a social performance? How does the concept of androgyny contribute to the understanding of identity in the novel? And my hypothesis is, the Orlando rejects the notion of fixed and stable identity by presenting gender as a fluid and performative. It argues that Woolf uses the concept of androgyny to demonstrate that identity is not determined by biological sex but is shaped by social, cultural, and psychological factors. Furthermore, the novel suggests that true selfhood lies beyond the rigid gender categories and can only be understood as a dynamic and evolving. And this is an introduction. Orlando, a biography 1928 by Virginia Woolf, is an important modernist text. The novel challenges traditional ideas of identity, gender, and selfhood. It presents a unique protagonist, Orlando, who transcends time and transforms from male to female. This transformation questions the stability of identity and rigid gender roles. Woolf uses the concept of androgyny to show the coexistence of masculine and feminine qualities. The novel presents a gender as a performance shaped by social and cultural expectation. Identity is portrayed a fluid, dynamic, and socially constructed rather than fixed. The text blends fantasy, biography, and history. And this is a infographic, the fluidity to self, Virginia Woolf Orlando. Virginia Woolf Orlando explore the concept of identity through a character who transcends time and gender. The novel argues that the self is not fixed, dualistic entity, but fluid spectrum that blend masculine and feminine qualities. And then a concept of androgyny definition. Androgyny refers to the coexistence of masculine and feminine qualities within a single individual. Woolf suggests that creative and mind should be androgynous, combine both masculine and feminine perspective. Beyond binary, androgyny challenge rigid gender divisions and fixed identity categories. This creative balance, it represents a harmony between masculine and feminine traits. And then androgyny in Orlando. In the Orlando gender transformation, Orlando changed from male to female, breaking the idea of fixed biological identity. And then identity beyond body. The novel separates physical sex from identity, showing that identity lies in the inner self, continuity of self. Despite transformation, Orlando inner identity remains stable. Blending of traits, Orlando shows both masculine and feminine characteristics, representing an androgynous personality. And then gender performance concept. Gender is not natural but performed through behavior and social roles. And then social construction. Gender identity is shaped by cultural expectation. Role-based behavior. Orlando behave differently as a male and female. And then gender and clothing. Clothing is identity marker. Clothing function as a visible and powerful symbol of gender identity and social position. It communicates societal expectation and signals belonging to certain gender norms. Behavior influence. Orlando changed the attire directly affect behavior, perception, and social interaction. The novel demonstrates that how one dress can shape how one is treated by society. Performative nature of gender. Clothing exposes gender as a constructed and performative identity rather than a fixed biological reality. Through Orlando, Woolf show the gender performance is shaped by societal expectation and can be altered through appearance. Breaking gender binary. Rejection of dualism. The novel rejects the strict division between male and female, showing that gender cannot be limited to fixed categories. And then gender spectrum. Gender is presented as a flexible and continuous rather than fixed, suggesting that identity exists on a spectrum. Writing, creativity, and identity. Creative expression. Orlando is a writer, and writing becomes a powerful medium to express inner thought and personal identity. It allows Orlando to reflect on experience and give shape to changing self, literature, and identity. Writing helps Orlando understand, question, and reconstruct identity over time. Through literature, Orlando explores the self as something fluid and continuously evolving. Art beyond gender. Creative ability shown as independent of gender, suggesting that artistic talent is not limited by male or female identity. Woolf emphasized that true creativity transcends gender boundaries. And then female experience in Orlando, gender inequality. As a woman, Orlando experienced social restriction and limited rights, revealing the unequal position of women in society. This highlights how gender determines access to freedom and power. Loss of freedom. After becoming a woman, Orlando loses the independence and privileges previously enjoyed as a man. This contrast clearly shows the imbalance between male-female experience. And then social expectation. Women are expected to behave modestly, obediently, and according to strict societal norms. Orlando is a pressure to confirm this expectation despite having a different inner identity. And then society and identity formation. Social influence. Identity is shaped by social and cultural norms, which define how individuals understand themselves and others. Society plays a key role in forming attitudes, behavior, and roles. And then external pressure. Individuals are expected to follow prescribed gender roles and societal expectations, often limiting personal freedom. This pressure forces people to conform to expect forms. And then narrative style and structure. The novel is written like a biography but challenged in convention. The narrator uses irony and humor to present serious themes. The text mixes historical reality with fantasy. Woolf uses modernist technique to break traditional storytelling. And then modern relevance and theory. The novel anticipates modern gender and queer theory. It aligns with the contemporary ideas of gender fluidity and identity politics. Woolf's work challenges essential views of identity. The text remains relevant in a discourse of gender and individual today. Symbolism and representation, clothing and the performance of gender. Drawing on Susan Walken's clothing in the novel functions as a visible marker of gender as a performance rather than essence. Garments are not just decorative but a tool through which character construct, conceal, or renative identity. By changing attire, character actively perform gender, highlighting how it's shaped by social expectation rather than biological certainty. Instability and fragmentation of self. The self is a fragmented and composed of multiple identities. Orlando embodies discontinuity within continuity. And questioning reality and truth. Subjective truth. Truth is presented as a subjective and shaped by perception. Unstable reality. The novel question fixed ideas of reality. And this is my whole presentation synthesis. Beyond the binary, the fluid identity of Virginia Woolf, Orlando. The concept of androgyny and the fragmented messiah. And this is my learning outcome. I can identify the explain how Virginia Woolf uses androgyny to challenge the fixed gender identity in Orlando, a biography. I can analyze how gender is represented as a perform shaped by social and cultural expectation in the novel. And this is my references. If you have any one question, please ask.
What does the novel say about gender roles in society? Okay, sir. What does the novel say about gender roles in society?
Society also makes the rules how men and female behavior in the society, but it is not natural. It can also be changed, and identity also not limited by the gender.
Dimple, my question is, what is the importance of writing in Orlando's life?
In the Orlando's life, writing is very important. It is also creating and expressing the thoughts and also understanding gender, and creative writing also independent of the gender. Thank you.
Today, Sajjad is helping. Next day, you have to adjust the camera. Everybody, you have to learn to see that how to set the camera focus.
Good morning, everyone. Myself Divya DABHI, and today I will be presenting on Virginia Woolf's famous novel Orlando, a biography. So my topic is time, history, and non-linear narration in modernist fiction. Virginia Woolf's Orlando biography. This is my academic and presentation details. This is my research question. How does Virginia Woolf's Orlando biography employ nonlinear narrative technique to challenge conventional notions of historical time to reconfigure identity within the framework of modernist fiction? My hypothesis is Virginia Woolf's Orlando biography uses nonlinear narration and temporal feudality to disrupt linear historical chronology, thereby exposing history as a constructed narrative and presenting identity, particularly gendered identity, as a fluid, performative, and shaped by subjective experience rather than the fixed historical progression. This is a table of content. Introduction. Modernist fiction arises from a dissatisfaction within a linear and chronological narration. Traditional realism fails to represent inner consciousness and historical rupture and subjective experience. Modernist writer experiment with a new narrative structure that challenge realist conventions. Virginia Woolf's Orlando, a biography, is a radical modernist experiment. The novel compressed nearly three centuries into a single life. Modernism and the crisis of time. Modernist writer rejects the linear realism, objective historical narration, and Victorian cause and effect plotting. This traditional form failed to represent the fragmented nature of modern experience. Modernism emphasized psychological time, fragmentation, and memory and perception. Woolf's concept of historical time. In Orlando biography, Virginia Woolf conceptualized historical time as a compressed, elastic, and symbolical rather than linear. This temporal strategy deliberately challenges the conventional assumption about historical realism. Woolf's manipulation of time exposes history as a literary construction rather than an objective continuum. Orlando is a pseudo biography. Although subtitle Orlando biography, the novel deliberately breaks the rule of traditional biography. It rejects strict biographical accuracy, historical realism, and linear documentation. Virginia Woolf uses a self-conscious and ironic narrative voice throughout the text. This narrative style parodies authority and seriousness of conventional biographical writing. The parody exposes how official historical narratives often exclude or marginalize the certain identities, especially women. Nonlinear narrative structure. In Orlando, Virginia Woolf breaks away from linear chronological narration. The novel uses sudden temporal leaps to move across different historical periods. Entire centuries are compressed into short narrative passages. At the same time, Woolf pauses the narrative to focus on a psychological important moment. This creates a nonlinear narrative structure characteristic of modernist fiction. Time in the novel is shaped by consciousness rather than by calendar of clock. Narrative duration expand or contrast according to emotional and mental intensity. Elasticity of time. Virginia Woolf presents time as elasticity rather than the fixed. Time expand or contrast according to emotional and psychological significance. This selective passing highlights subjective temporality as a defining feature of modernist aesthetics. History as a satire. Virginia Woolf presents history as absurd and ideologically constructed rather than objective. Historical events appears without clear causes, exposing the artificial nature of historical narratives. will show how official history privileges empire and partial masculinity. Satire become Woolf's main strategy to question and demystify historical authority, gender, time, and identity. Orlando's gender transformation challenges biographical determinism and historical gender role. Gender becomes flexible and transformative as the time progresses. Changes in gender are linked to shift in historical periods. Stable and fixed nation of identity are challenged. Identity is shown as historically and culturally constructed. This perspective aligns with the feminist modernist thought. Feminist modernist temporality. Feminist modernism challenges party, patriarchal concept of time and historical progress. Male-centered historical narrative are shown to exclude women's experience. This model allows women to exist outside conventional historical and social script. Narrative voice and temporality. The narrator often disrupt the linear sequence of events, reflecting modernist experimentation with the time. Historical events are questioned and reinterpreted, showing that the past is a construct rather than absolute. A self-reflective narration, emphasizing the fictional nature of the story, reminding readers that history is meditated throughout narrative. Conclusion. Woolf challenges traditional linear time to question historical authority. Orlando's timeline is non-linear, allowing multiple perspectives on events. History in Orlando is presented as ironic and unstable. The narrative emphasizes subjectivity over objective truth. Woolf links time to politics, gender, and literary experimentation. This is my learning outcome. I learned how modernist writers, especially Virginia Woolf, reject linear and traditional historical narration. I understand how Orlando uses non-linear time and narrative experimentation to question realism and historical authority. Finally, I learned how Woolf's feminist and modernist narrative strategies redefine biography and expand the possibilities of literary form. This is my references. Thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Divya, my question is, why does Orlando live for 300 years but only age a little bit?
Even though Orlando lives for 300 years, but he ages a little bit. He ages a little bit when the main life changes. Things happen in Orlando. This shows the Wolf's rejection of non-linear time. In the novel, time is shown as psychological, not chronological.
Divya, my question to you, what is the main message behind Orlando? Divya, my question to you, what is the main message behind Orlando changing from man to woman?
The message is Orlando changing from man to woman is that identity is a feudality, and it also shows that gender is uh, it also shows that gender is sorry for the inconvenience. Oh, sorry, I will look throughout this question and I will give you the answer.
So by the time he gets ready, okay, we are not seeing many citations from Taylor and Francis. Honors we suggested. No? This one I think I got in Shivani's presentation. Okay. This article. The other still gestor is used, that also is good by many. I have seen the gestor links in this Milan presentation. Okay. And others also. Okay. So that is good. DOI citations are also there, that also is good. Okay. Still explore more of honors, one nation, one subscription things, and pick up articles in the subsequent presentations from that also. You will find some latest articles also. So if you refer, this is 25. The same way, very near articles also you have to refer to see that what nowadays people are saying about the topic that you have selected.
Hello everyone, myself Gohil Jaipal, and today I will be represent alchemy of the self, blurring genre and gender in Virginia Woolf, Orlando. There are my presentation information, academic information, and then table of content. Now, introduction, the periodic biography. Definition: Orlando is a periodic biography that mock Victorian obsessed with a great man and faculty accuracy. The source: it is a fictionalized account of Woolf lover Vita Sackville West. Christie Byrne note that writing a biography of lover involved a powerfully mulled identification that created both desire, need of parody. The goal: Woolf use a parody, unravel any fantasy is the fixed and perfect feminist reference. She is just not telling a life story. She is deconstructing how we define a life itself. Their research question and hypothesis. Their research question: how does Woolf destabilization of biographical genre and the use of clothing metaphor, silence, and essentialist belief in the pixel genre role. Their hypothesis: by manipulating of the spirit of age and historical fashion, Woolf demonstrate that identity is not a innate biography instant, but a fluid performance that changes throughout social and literary context. Then first, prelude of phantasma of the mind, shifting identities. Easter's Censis Pordo and Gonzalez argues that Woolf treat his mind as a phantasmagories, shifting a series of images rather than a static entity. And in Rebel, when Orlando sends sex and narrator of cries truth, and the truth reveal that Orlando remain his same person. This scan paradox is the search for bare next truth. Suggestion that what he essential is actually the reversibility of sex. Stream stress of identity is essential versus constructed. Locke versus Woolf. Woolf mocks John Locke's theory. Locke's theory that identity is the single thread. Instead, she argues she herself is a perfect rag base of odd ends. The power of fabrics. Clothing is the primary tools of construction. Orlando realized the finality and privilege of a woman's wood only after feeling the soil of skills. Memory of rules. Memory act as a capricious stitching together fragments of the past of creating coherence but fabricate selves. Then blurring genres, metafiction as a feminist strategies, descriptions. Beth Bohemians argue that Woolf blur of the lines between facts and fictions. They are player of the blurring of male and female, the contemporary narrators. A biographer in the novel intentionally incomplete enable for Orlando down. This create critics of particular patriarchal tradition of biography which seeks to fix a subject in rigid categories. Legacy. This link Orlando directly to a room of one owns, where a woman must found a space outside of female tradition of define of her identities, uh, sapping subversions desire beyond the binary. Querying the text, Sharon Knopf argued that the novel is a sapphic text where sexual ambiguity is a tool for liberations. Orlando relationship with the Russian princess Sasha act as a catalyst for this fluidity. Love as a resistance. Orlando ability to enjoy the love of both sexual equally challenge the heteronormative marriage plot common in English literature. Their historical resonance from Ariosto of Woolf, the androgynous hero, Murin Melita, compare Woolf work to Ludovico Ariosto Orlando in Furioso. Well, Ariosto hero is a knight errant, virgin. Wolf hero is a knight of mind, navigated of fluid boundaries of genre across 4 centuries. Literary alchemy. Wolf take a Renaissance concept of androgyny and applying to into modern era, showing that essential self has always been a collective of many voices. 21st century reflect Orlando on screen, visual fluidity. Sally Potter film adaptations translate a Wolf complex internal monologues into a visual genre performance. Their cinematic gaze, Wallinger and Teresa argue that the film protagonist speaker directly to audience to reclaim her voice, mooring a Wolf breaking of the truth wall in literature. There are my conclusion. Virginia Woolf Orlando declaimant of idea of fixed essential identities of present of self fluid, evolving and shaped by historical culture and performance through gender transformation, metafiction, and symbolical of clothings. Woolf demonstrate the gender is not innate but social construction and performative. The concept of androgyny emerged a liberal idea allowing individual to translate or rigging binary and identity. Ultimately, identity in Orlando is alchemy of self, dynamic of synthesis of memory, desire, and social influence. Uh, Virginia Woolf work remains highly relevant today, offering power of critics and gender and norms and affirming the possibility of multiple fluid self and beyond limitations. And there are my references. And so, thank you. If you have question, you can ask me.
So my question is, how does Woolf show that gender identity is not fixed but challengeable in Orlando?
Okay. Um, Orlando changed female to male and female, but requiredly he was the a person that are fluid and fiction. Okay.
Jaipal, my question to you: what is the main message behind Orlando changing from a man to a woman?
Okay. Virginia Woolf called Orlando a parodic biography because it was a mock tradition biography that mixed the fact and fictions and make a fun of traditional life writings. Okay, so that's all. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So, today I will go with my topic, which is the role of love and relationship in Orlando. Here is my academic details as well as my presentation details, and this is the roadmap of my presentation. So, introduction. Orlando is published in 1928. Virginia Woolf's Orlando is a landmark modernist novel spanning over 300 years of English history. The protagonist, Orlando, unexpectedly changes sex from male to female midway through the narrative without aging. The novel serves as a satirical, profound exploration how society construct rules around love, marriage, and gender. Love is presented not as a rigid, biologically bound duty, but as a fluid, evolving, and transcendent psychological force. And here is my research question. How does Virginia Woolf utilize the protagonist's fluid gender and extended lifespan in Orlando to deconstruct a traditional Victorian concept of love and heteronormative relationships? And the hypothesis is Woolf posits that true romantic connection requires an androgynous mind and transcended physical biological sex. The novel demonstrates that historical and societal rules regarding courtship and marriage are largely performative and restrictive. And the redefining connection through androgyny. Woolf rejects the traditional duality of male versus female as a prequest for romantic connection. She argues that profound understanding and genuine love require a mind that balance both masculine and feminine traits. According to Woolf, the sexual difference is given by education, but it does not intend to promote male female duality, but to redefine femininity while proclaiming that a mind must be androgynous. And the allure of Sasha, Orlando's early romantic awakening is driven by mystery and ambiguity rather than the strict gender conformity. The immediate attraction to Russian princess Sasha demonstrates that love is sparked by a blending of gender expression. Orlando is enabled to tell whether Sasha is a man or woman. For her height and clothes make her appear androgynous. Orlando's romance with the Russian princess Sasha is engraved in his or her mind. Romance as a transgression and a role play. Woolf portrays romance and courtship as a elaborate performative act rather than the natural inevitability. Character frequently use cross-dressing to transgress assigned sexual roles and safety explores their desires. The sexual courtship of transvestite Aikduk has become a theoretical performance, role-playing on the stage, and transgresses the sexual roles as assigned by the heterosexuality. Love surviving physical metamorphosis. Orlando's sudden physical sex change alters their social standing, but crucially, it does not change their core identity or capacity to love. Woolf uses this deconstruct the essentialist view that love and attraction are determined solely by physical sex. The change of sex, though it altered their future, did not whatever to alter their identity. Woolf, through Orlando's metamorphosis, deconstruct the essentialist view that gender is a fixed, biologically determined aspect of identity. The union of two androgynous souls. As a woman in 19th century, social pressure demands that Orlando find a house, the husband to protect her property and status, and Orlando's eventually marriage to Shelmerdine subverts this. It succeeds because both partner possess fluid and androgynous qualities. Orlando's marriage with Shelmerdine is unique, for they have many qualities of opposite sexes, and the oak tree as a lifelong companion. Throughout the novel, Orlando's dedication to writing the poem "The Oak Tree" functions as a parallel to romantic relationships. Art and poetry provides a constant, faithful companionship that outlasts human lovers and survives across the centuries. And the real love letter via Vita Sequel West banned the fiction. Orlando is widely recognized by scholars as a century-spanning love letter to Woolf's romantic partner Vita Sequel West. The novel serves as a public tribute to Sequel West. Fluid sexuality, identity, and complex romantic life. And in Orlando, love acts as the ultimate unifying force capable of transcending historical eras, physical genders, and rigid societal expectations. Woolf effectively proves that relationships built on intellectual and spiritual alignment rather than physical or legal requirement are the most enduring. Through its imaginative and non-linear narrative, the novel explores themes of gender, identity, time, love, and creativity, and it challenges traditional ideas about femininity and masculinity. And here is my learning outcome. By the end of this presentation, I'm able to identify how Virginia Woolf utilized modernist narrative techniques to challenge 19th century patriarchal relation norms, and understand the concept of androgynous mind and its necessity to for the genuine romantic connection in Woolf's philosophy. And here are my references, and if you guys have any question, please ask.
So, Sandeep, my question is, what does the oak tree symbolize in the novel?
Okay, thank you, Divya. So basically, the oak tree symbolizes the constant and what we can say, the faithful companion in Orlando's life, because it art and creativity is very helpful to maintain good human relationship. So this is the thing that what the oak tree is symbolizing. Any other?
Hello, Sandeep. My question is, why is the concept of androgynous mind important in the novel?
Okay, thank you, Jaypal. So basically, androgynous mind means who has the basic understanding that what is the feminist view and what is the masculine. So it helps to maintain what we can say true love or good human relationship. That is why the androgynous mind is important in this novel. So thank you. This is from my side.
Greetings to all. I'm Sejad Chokya, and today I will deal with the topic gender, times, and feminist historiography in Virginia Woolf's Orlando. Here are my academics and as well as my presentation details. Table of content. Modernist literature frequently challenges traditional ideas about identity, history, and narrative form. In Orlando, a biography, Virginia Woolf experiments with the representation of gender, times, and historical continuity. The novel follows the protagonist Orlando across several centuries, portraying a transformation from male to female and revealing how identity challenges within different historical contexts. Critics argues that the text reflect Woolf's relationship with Vita Sackville West and functions as a literary exploration of gender and sexuality. Through this experimental narrative, Woolf challenges traditional historical narratives and proposes a feminist reinterpretation of literary history. My research question for this presentation is that how does Orlando, a biography, represent gender as a fluid rather than fixed? How does Virginia Woolf challenge traditional historical narratives through the character of Orlando? In what ways does novel reinterpret history from a feminist perspective? Hypothesis would be Orlando presents gender identity as a fluid and socially constructed. Woolf challenges patriarchal literary history by presenting women's experiences within historical narrative. The novel treatment of time reflects a modernist understanding of history as a subjective and experimental. Theoretical framework, gender and sexual identity, feminist historiography, biographical context, modernist concept of time. Gender and sexual identity. In Orlando, a biography, gender identity is present as fluid rather than fixed, as Orlando in several centuries changes his or her genders. The protagonist Orlando experiences life as both a man and a woman across different historical periods. This transformation challenges traditional distinctions between masculinity and femininity. Critics argues that Woolf cautions rigid gender categories and suggests that identity is shaped by social and historical context. The novel therefore presents gender as a cultural construction rather than a biological certainty. In feminist historiography, Orlando reinterprets literary history from a feminist perspective. Virginia Woolf here challenges traditional historical narratives that often include women's experiences. Through Orlando's journey across different centuries, the novel reflects the changing social position of women. Once, when Orlando was the man, he was seen by society in a different perspective. When he transformed herself into female version or female personality, the way society look at his or her, that is totally different. This narrative approach highlights how history is shaped by cultural and patriarchal structures. Woolf therefore presents literature as a space where women's voices and experiences can be reinserted into history. Modernist treatment of time in Orlando, a biography. The time of Orlando is 300 years, which is divided into Elizabethan era, Restoration, Victorian era, and it ends in Modernist era, 1928. Orlando as a nobleman life is a core gender transformation in modern identity. Virginia Woolf experiments with narrative time with extending Orlando's life across several centuries. The protagonist ages very little while historical period change. This challenges traditional chronological storytelling. Critics argue that Woolf represents time as a subjective and experiential rather than strictly linear.
Time in the novel therefore reflects the modernist interest in consciousness and historical change. Vita Sequel West and the inspiration for Orlando. The character of Orlando is widely interpreted as inspired by Vita Sequel West. Virginia Woolf shared a close and personal intellectual relationship with the Vita Sequel West. Critics like D. Salvo argues that Woolf used the novel to transform this relationship into literary form. The novel blends biography, imagination, and historical narrative in portrayal of Orlando. Some scholars describe Orlando as a literary tribute to Vita Sequel West. Gender fluidity and sexual identity in Orlando. Orlando, the protagonist, undergoes a dramatic transformation from male to female, which becomes one of the central narrative devices of the novel. Whenever uh, uh, two times when Orlando changes his gender, he goes into this deep cycle of sleeping, and that is overly dramatic. Through this transformation, Virginia Woolf challenges the traditional assumptions that gender identity is fixed, neutral, and biologically determined. Instead, the novel suggests that gender roles are shaped by social expectations and historical context. After becoming a woman, Orlando begins to experience the restriction, limitation, and social pressures imposed on women in different historical periods. For example, when Orlando turned into woman, it was a restoration era, and he does not able to get his wealth, which was his own wealth, but as he's now a woman and identified himself as her, he's not able to uh, occupy that property. This contrast between Orlando's experiences as a man and as a woman reveals the inequalities embedded in social structures in different ages. Critics therefore argues that Woolf presents gender identity as a fluid and culturally constructed rather than stable or permanent. Feminist rewriting of literary history. Virginia Woolf challenges traditional literary history, which has largely ignored women experiences. The novel moves across several centuries, showing how the social position of women changes over time. Critics suggest D.G. That Woolf rewrites literary history by inserting women's perspectives into historical narrative. Orlando's transformation into woman reveals the limitations placed on women in literature and society as well. Scholars also note that the novel reflects Woolf's relationship with Vita Sequel West, turning personal history into literary narrative. Through this narrative strategy, Woolf presents literature as a space where women's experiences can be restored as a historical memory. Here are the scholarly perspective from the I have taken this art scholarly perspective from the article which I have used. Luisa A. Di Salvo argues that Orlando's a biography reflects the personal and intellectual relationship between Virginia Woolf and Vita Sequel West, which explore the theme of gender. Uh, while on the other hand, Karen Koyova examines how the novel questions fixed sexual identity and destabilizes traditional gender categories, which also explores the theme of gender. Elizabeth interprets the text as a representing female desire and lesbian identity through Woolf's imaginative engagement with Vita, which also explored the theme of gender. Jane D. Gay suggests that Woolf reconstruct literary history by interpreting women's experience into historical narrative, which explored the theme of feminist historiography. James Southall Wilson emphasized Woolf's experimental representation of the time and her rejection of strict chronological narratives, which explored the theme of time. Let's conclude the presentation. Orlando explores the theme of gender, time, and history through an experimental narrative structure. Woolf presents gender identity as fluid by transforming Orlando from male to female across 300 years in different centuries. The novel treatment of time challenges traditional historical narratives and reinterprets the through subjective experience. Through Orlando's journey across different centuries, Woolf reconstructs literary history by foregrounding women's experiences. Therefore, the novel demonstrates how gender identity, historical narrative, and literary tradition can be reinterpreted from a feminist perspective. Here are the slide of references. This is from my side. Thank you.
Hello, Suzat. Hello, Suzat. My question is, if Orlando, okay, sir. Hello, Sejat. My question is, if Orlando, a biography represents a gender as a fluid, uh, does it truly escape a binary thing, or does it still depend on male, female categories to make fluidity meaningful?
Okay, Jaypal, thank you for your question. The novel challenges gender roles, but it doesn't completely move beyond them. Orlando shifts being male and female, but still stays within those two categories. One of the article that I have taken is from Elizabeth Mises. She suggests that identity is shaped through language and differences, not something fixed. So Woolf shows that gender is flexible, but she doesn't fully break away from the idea of male and female.
Hello. So you have argued that okay, you have argued that Woolf rewrites history from a feminist perspective. But does Orlando's biography genuinely recovers a women's history, or does it fictionalize it to the point where it loses the historical reality?
Okay, Sandeep, thank you for your question. Woolf is not trying to write a real or accurate history. She is questioning how history is written as questioning, as Jane D. Gay explained in his article, uh, that suggests that Woolf mixes fantasy with history to show that traditional history often leaves women out. So the novel is not about being factually correct. It is about making us think about who writes history and whose stories are included by those historiographers. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Hiralba Jadeja. Today I am present topic about dream, class and social mobility, a comparative study of the Great Gatsby and the White Tiger. These are my academic information. These are the table of content. My research question is that in what ways do F. Scott Fitzgerald and Arvind Adiga use a narrative to demonstrate that the dream of social mobility is a hegemonic construct designed to facilitate the exploitation of subtle, and how does the pursuit of dream necessitate the moral and physical dehumanization of individual within a capitalist framework? My hypothesis is that it is that both the texts, The Great Gatsby and The White Tiger, function as a critique of neoliberal and industrial capitalism. The study posits that genuine upward mobility is structurally blocked by the ruling elite. Therefore, the marginalized protagonist must either perish in attempt to conform or survive by adopting criminal transformation that subverts that established hegemonic order. Introduction. This presentation undertakes the comparative analysis. The Great Gatsby and the White Tiger explore dynamics of dreams, class structure, and social mobility. Both texts emerge from distinct socio-historical contexts, like Zaz Age America and post-liberalization India, yet converge in their critique of capitalist ideologies and structural inequality. Through a comparative lens, the study examines how individual ambitions interacts with class stratification, moral compromise, and socio-economic constraint. Author's background. F. Scott Fitzgerald, a central figure of Zaz's age, offering a critical interrogation of ideological construct underlying in American dream. Depict capitalist social marked by commodification of human relation and moral decline. Arvind Adika, post-liberalization winter analyze neoliberal India and class inequality, reveals the economics of oppression and systematic interment of the sublent. Comparative insight, both authors dismantle national myths, the American dreams, and entrepreneurial success, showing that social mobility is shaped by structural inequality rather than individual merits. Historical and contextual background. The landscape of transition from feudalism to neoliberalism, the American Jazz age, a post-war era defined by a shift from agro-based society to industry-based state. This period fostered disregards for man by man for money. The new India, defined by global city and jobless growth. India's economy created a sharp divide between the light and darkness. The common ground both setting represent transitional society where traditional moralities collapse. Theoretical framework, lenses of socio-economic critique, cultural materialism, examine how specific material conditions, wealth, labor, and environment dictate the psychological consciousness of character like Gatsby and Balram. Gramscian's hegemony contextualizes the rooster coup as a system of spontaneous concept, where the oppressed internalize and accept their own subjection as the natural social order. Ideological apparatus analyzes how societal instruction are weaponized to reinforce the myth of entrepreneur, masking systematic inequality with the illusion of meritocracy. This framework reveals that power is maintained not just through economic force, but through the psychological control of the subtend world view. Dream and aspiration. The green light and white tiger symbol of inaccessible futures. Ideological control. The dream is an insidious function of cultural hegemony that encourages the poor to provide spontaneous constant to their own exploitation, believing they can one day join the elite. J. Gatsby aspiration. Gatsby dream is not merely financial, but an attempt to use wealth to bridge the gap between new money and aristocratic status. However, his failure proves that the elite view the aspiring poor, the capitalist victimizer. Balram otherwise white tiger identity. Balram represents the rare individual who breaks the cycle of servility. The cost of the dream. For both protagonists, the aspiration of mobility requires the commodification of the self. Gatsby recreates his identity into a hollow persona, while Balram transforms into cold-blooded interpreter, provoking that a capitalist structure individual collapse into a amoral entitled to survive. Class and social stratification, capitalist, capitalist victimizer, elite figures like Tom weaponize wealth as a tool for manifold activities, manifold activities destructive to human relationship. The interwoven trapped in White Tiger, caste and economic exploitation are deeply interwoven, creating a rigid hierarchy that traditional labor cannot breach. In comparative insight, we can see that stratification in maintained through hegemony. The poor are not just economically oppressed, but are ideologically trained to protect the very system that enslaves them. Social mobility and its limits, the illusion of ascent, the fragility of new reach. Wealth fails to grant Gatsby moral or pro-human status among the elite. In the interpreter exits, Balram achieved mobility only murdering his master, and we can see that both texts suggest that the dream is structurally designed to fail the subaltern, and success necessitates either the death of the dreamer or the death of their humanity. Narrative technique and symbolism, decoding language and critique, symbol like the green light, and in Gatsby we can see that the chandelier and white tiger symbolize the hollow trapping of success, subversive narration, unreliable protagonist. Nick and Balram Halwai offer subjective critique using their outsider and insider status of unmarked ruling class hypocrisy. Comparative insight shared dehumanizing, contrasting mode of agency, the final toll. These are my detailed infographic of the presentation. Conclusion, a comparative reading The Great Gatsby and The White Tiger demonstrate that the social mobility is neither free nor equally accessible, but rather deeply conditioned by structural inequalities. These are my learning outcomes. I have understood how social mobility works differently in various cultural and economic contexts. These are my references. Thank you. If any question, please ask me.
Hello, Ralba. So my question is, if the dream is an illusion, why do people still continue to believe in it?
One reason is that dreams gives hope and motivation, but society and media also encouraged. But even if reality is different, if anyone.
Hirilba, how does capitalism influence individual identity in both the texts that you have taken in your presentation?
Okay. Capitalism is shaped by making people focus on money and status. We can see that in the Great Gatsby, Gatsby changes himself to look rich, and while in the White Tiger we can see that Balram to gain a power and freedom. In both the cases, we can see that they loses their identity and moral values. Thank you so much. This is
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, just wait, sir. In the last presentation, Hiral has referred to some of the sources and what minor errors you have done. So here you see cultural materialism. This is third citation. Now, as per the rule, it should go with the last name of the person. So when you open that article, you find the names given there very clearly. So that won't have been a problem to cite the names of the person. Why? But but why you changed it? No, it is there. No, name is there in that cultural materialism. The name is there in the slide. Then why have you removed it? Because in the how to cite that they have mentioned. That's why in how to cite that they have given there. No, that's not that. You have to put it according to the format. Which format you are referring to. Likewise, it has to be cited. It is not showing here according to which style you want to do that. If you select APA, MLA, then it has to come accordingly. But it is not coming like that. What they have said, but it is not coming according to that rule. Then you have referred to this another one, Shivani Mishra Ritu Pandey. That is this article from Creative Saplings. So last name first, not first name first. So in your citation you are given Shivani Mishra. It should be Mishra Shivani, and second name as it is Ritu Pandey. First name goes with the last name. Yes, you can start.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jansi Rathod, and today I'm going to talk about the architect of the myth, Nick Carraway's narrative unreliability. Here is my academic information. Here are the table of contents. So my research question is, how does Nick Carraway's narrative in unreliability functions as a mechanism for constructing the myth identity of J. Gatsby? And the hypothesis is Nick Carraway's narrative unreliability function as a key mechanism in constructing Gatsby's mythic identity, as his selective narration, shaped by memory, shifting perspectives and moral biases, and transforms Gatsby from a real individual into a symbolic and idealized figure. Here's the introduction. So the Great Gatsby is written by Scott Fitzgerald, is narrated through voice of Nick Carraway, in which positions himself as morally grounded observer. And we can see the closer examination, like his narration is shaped by personal perception rather than the real truth or the objective truth, and his admiration for Gatsby influences how the events are described, and the judgments towards the characters are inconsistent, which creates a narrative that is not simply a record of events but a constructed interpretation of reality. Narrative context. The novel is structured as a retrospective first-person narrative, which means events are told after they have already occurred, and the narrator reflects on past experiences, which leads to temporal distance between event and narration, and reinterpretation of past experiences, and the memories do not function as a neutral recording. Concept of unreliable narration. Unreliable narration occurs when narrator's account are not trusted, and when the reflections are subjective biases rather than the objective truth. In this narrative, we can see the narrator's perceptions are influenced by different emotions, and the interpretations are full of conflict and observable events. And the unreliability emerges not from fleshhood but from partial truth, which is shaped by perspective. Constructing meaning in unreliable narratives. So the interpretation of the unreliable narrator is totally dependent on the reader's ability, which identifies the contradictions within the narrative, and which also recognizes the gaps or silences while the storytelling. And the concept of interpretive adjustments suggests that readers are actively resolved and narrative meaning is not fixed. Memory and retrospection. So the narrative is shaped by memory, which introduces selective recalls of events and the reorganization of events. And these memories tends to highlights of emotional significant moments and suppress of minimize uncomfortable truths. And as a result, we can see the narrative becomes less factual accuracy and more about the subjective reconstruction. Structural unreliability. The structure of narrative contributes the unreliability, and events are not presented in chronological order, but the narrator controls the pacing and emphasis. And the selective representation of reality. The structure is therefore not neutral but carefully arranged. Multiple narrative perspectives. So the narration operates through shifting perspectives. We can see the immediate participants in events and the reflective narrator recounting his past, and we can also see the layers create in the story. We can also see the differences between experience, recollection, conflicts, multiplicity, and this multiplicity leads to instability and difficulties in determining the objective truth. And this shifting perspective results fragmented and layered narrative. Narrative gaps and ambiguity. So the narrative frequently relies on indirect suggestions, partial disclosures, and the important information is often implied rather than the clearly stated. And this creates ambiguity in understanding characters and events, uncertainty but what is true. And this meaning emerges through interpretation of what is not explicitly said. Imagery of disorder. So the narrative includes imagery associated with decay, fragmentation, chaos, and this reflects moral instability and psychological uncertainty. And the environment described is not stable, and the perception is influenced by the disorder, and this reinforces the idea that the narration is not fully reliable. Selective perception. The narrator focuses on Gatsby's idealism, dreams, and which minimizes the involvement of illegal activities, and the important aspect of reality are reduced or ignored. Internal contradictions. The narrative contains contradictions which claims of objectivity and conflicts. Expression of detachment is contrasting with emotional involvement, and these contradictions reveals inconsistency in perspectives, and readers are then forced to question the reliability to the account, and this unreliability becomes visible through the internal tensions. Myth making process. Through the selective narration, we can see the symbol of aspiration, tragic, and hero figure, and this transformation involves minimizes flaws and farming actions in romantic light. We can the role of the reader. We can see the reader plays essential role, and this reconstructing balanced version of events, and which means it is not directly given, but it emerges through active engagement. Here is the table synthesis of arguments. So the conclusion is that the analysis demonstrates that Nick Carraway's narrative is unreliability plays a central role, and rather than providing an objective account, we can see that the narrative is filtered through memories, shifting perspectives, and this leads to selective interpretive reconstruction. And as a result, we can see that The Gatsby is not presented as fully realistic individual, and therefore it can be concluded that narrative unreliability functions as a key mechanism through which Gatsby mythic identity is constructed. Here are the references. Thank you. Anyone has any questions?
Chancy, how do Nick's personal values affect his narration in this particular text?
So the Nick values more about Nick's values are totally different. He likes simplicity and honesty, but he also admires his wealth and charm. So his narration is not totally reliable in the story.
Hello, Jancy. My question is that does Nick become more reliable or unreliable by the end of the novel?
By the end, we can see that the Nick is more understanding people better than the Gatsby, and we can also see that his sympathy for the Gatsby, which affects his whole story, and by the end we can see that the narrator is not totally trustworthy. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Hello everyone. Today my topic is I am Khushi Parmar. Today my topic is the aristocracy of the Jazz Age, a comparative character study of old money and new money. Here is my academic information, then table of content. And my research question is, how does the Great Gatsby represent the distinction between old money and new money? And what does the comparison reveal about aristocratic power and social hierarchy in the Jazz Age? And hypothesis is, although the economic prosperity of the Jazz Age created opportunities for individual to accumulate wealth and rise economically through social authority and concentrated among traditional aristocratic elites, consequently, newly wealthy individuals such as Gatsby were able to achieve financial success but struggled to obtain cultural legitimacy and social acceptance. Introduction. The 1920s, often called the Jazz Age, was a period marked by rapid economic growth, technological innovation, and the rise of consumer culture in the United States. During this period, industrial expansion and financial speculation allowed many individuals to accumulate wealth rapidly. However, economic success did not necessarily guarantee social acceptance. American society continued to value family heritage, cultural prestige, and inherited wealth, which preserved the authority of traditional aristocratic elites. In the Great Gatsby, we can see Fitzgerald Poetics, a society divided between old money aristocrats and new money entrepreneurs. Through the experience of characters such as Gatsby, Tom Buchanan, and Daisy Buchanan, the novel reveals the tension between economic mobility and inherited social hierarchy. The comparative framework. In the comparative framework, we can see examines the contrast between old money and new money characters through key analytical categories. First is the source of wealth. This inherited wealth, old money, but still self-made wealth is from new money. Then social legitimacy is from established social authority versus struggle from acceptance within elite society. Then cultural identity is refined traditions and inherited values versus performative luxury and limitation of elite culture. Then social inclusion from automatic inclusion in aristocratic culture circle versus inclusion despite economic success. Moral hierarchies and ethical contrast, careless privilege and moral indifference versus ambition, idealism, and emotion investment. Historical context, the Jazz Age. The Jazz Age was characterized by economic prosperity, technological innovation, and expanding consumer culture. This period witnessed the rise of a new wealthy class, often referred to as the new rich. Fitzgerald reflects this historical reality through the symbolic geography of East Egg and the West Egg, which represent inherited aristocracy and newly acquired wealth respectively. Aristocracy and social hierarchy. Aristocracy refers to a social elite distinguished by inherited wealth, family lineage, and cultural prestige. In the society portrayed in the Great Gatsby, aristocratic identity is reinforced by generational wealth, social inclusivity, cultural refinement, and elite networks. So, Friedrich argues that Fitzgerald frequently associated wealth with power and privilege, illustrating how social elites maintain their dominance despite economic changes. Then old money culture. Old money represents individual whose wealth has been inherited over multiple generations. So characteristic of that long established family heritage, cultural prestige, and social confidence, then participate in elite social networks. So in the Great Gatsby, Tom Buchanan and Daisy Buchanan represent all money aristocracy, and their wealth and social status provide them with authority and protection within elite society. Unlike newly wealthy individuals, all money elites do not need to display their wealth openly. Their status is already recognized through lineage and tradition. Then new money culture. New money refers to individuals who have recently accumulated wealth through modern and business venture of speculation. These individuals often seek social recognition by displaying wealth through luxury and extra advantages. Jay Gatsby exemplifies his social group, his lavish parties, luxurious mansion, and extravagant lifestyle represented attempts to gain acceptance within aristocratic society. This is a comparative character analysis table. In this, we can see the old money. Old money source of wealth is inherited wealth, and new money is newly acquired wealth. In social status, is old money is established aristocracy, and new money is emerging wealthy class. Then cultural identify is old money is tradition and heritage. Then new money is display and ambition. So representative characters are Tom and Daisy in old money, and new money is Jay Gatsby. So social expenses in old money is fully accepted elite, and new money is social outsider. Then consumption and wealth display. The culture of Jazz Age encourage individual to display wealth. Publicity is a sign of prestige and social power. In the Great Gatsby, material luxury such as lavish parties, expensive clothing, and grand mansions symbolize the social ambition of newly wealthy class. So, Gatsby's wealth symbolizes both promise and illusion of the American dream. However, Fitzgerald ultimately suggests the material wealth alone cannot guarantee true social acceptance of legitimacy when within in the old money aristocracy. The American dream and social mobility. Gatsby's life story reflects the broader ideal of the American dream, which promises the individuals can achieve success through ambition and determination. So, despite his wealth, Gatsby remains excluded from aristocratic society, demonstrating that class barriers prestige even within support the democratic culture. Here is the key comparative findings. Aristocratic elites maintain power through inherited prestige. Then social expense depends not only on wealth but also in a lineage and social network. Then conclusion. So the comparative study of old money and new money in The Great Gatsby highlights the persistent influence of aristocracy's privilege in the jazz age. Through the tragic story of Gatsby, Fitzgerald demonstrates the American dream of unlimited social mobility is ultimately constructed by enduring the class division. So this novel therefore offers a powerful critique of the relationship between wealth, identify, and power in modern American society. So here is my learning outcome. I able to identify the difference between old money and new money in the novel, and analyze social stratification and aristocratic power in the jazz age. Here is my resources. Thank you. If anyone question, please ask me.
Hello, Khushi. My question is that why does society accept inherited wealth more easily than self-earned wealth?
So old money has a tradition and a value, and new money feels fresh and less trusted. That's why society accept old money culture.
Hello, Khushi. So my question is, if wealth cannot buy acceptance, then what truly defines social belonging?
So belonging is about values and behavior, not just money. That's why acceptance come from in fitting in it. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Nancy and my today's topic is Sound, Power and Illusion, a cultural study of jazz and modern identity in The Great Gatsby. This is my academic details, table of content, research question, how the jazz tradition was contrasted, how literature and criticism shape its meaning and how it's remained important today. My hypothesis, jazz is not simply music, but it's a cultural narrative which make differences with the historical memories. Introduction. The jazz is not 1920s cultural revolution, but a musical era which is emerged after the World War One, and it's give valuable donation to changes value of American literature or American society customs, and this origin in African American community. Then it's come in Chicago, New York. It's feel anxiety and identically crisis. The Great Gatsby represent illusion and reality through the jazz age. This jazz age express suffering, resistance, and cultural identity. Jazz age and modern America. The 1920 witness urban explanation, youth, and the capitalism, cultural evolution are the going through the modern America. Then sound and modernity, freedom, expression are the also relevant with this modern America. It's progress plus anxiety. The Great Gatsby and the Jazz Age. The Great Gatsby present a clear picture of jazz age and society lifestyle. And then Bertolt highlights some point by the novel. It highlights the attractive luxuries of 1920s and American dreams, shows that wealth and success is misleading or unreal. Relevance the lack of trust and experiment in the modern society. Jazz in the novel stands for the fast moving society and shallow modern cultures. Further ideas for this novel by Bellot is Great Gatsby is real meaning for illusion. People appear happy but empty inside. The story shows the dreams often not match the reality. Illusion and excess in the Great Gatsby. Gatsby's parties is symbolize the lavish music and chaotic anxiety. Everyone come in this, but no one know everyone. Yet relationships are shallow. Identity is unstable. Chess become a metaphor for modern illusion, society performance, and the American dreams. Contributing and the jazz tradition. Scott mentioned that jazz history is not a natural fixed, but is fixed by the critics. Is simply timeline was New Orleans swings and bebops. This makes jazz look like and develop and straight by straight away. But in reality, jazz is existent by the time and same time. Jazz did not follow only one path, but it have a many various parts. Only some musics are, while the others are ignored in jazz. Jazz criticism and ideology. John mentioned that critics of jazz helps to people understand the jazz. Music learn that reading crisis and opinions. Critics decide which jazz was real and better. This idea was sometimes influenced by race. Main idea of this jazz understand is shaped by opinions, power, and society, not just by music. Cultural approach and rewriting jazz history. Jazz was created by black community, but after it spread in Chicago and New York, the Great Gatsby, jazz is used as entertainment, and but later all are ignorance its root. This shows cultural appreciation, racial identity, and American dreams. Many jazz historians believe that rescue black community by the anxiety present jazz as general American art. Scholars now believe that question this history is this have the main roots or not. Try to bring back to lost voices of black people and the suffering of American pupils. Main idea jazz history must be rewriting to give proper creative or additions. Jazz and moral panic. In jazz, we not only show the music but the panic of the people, society, and American dreams. Theater and American souls. David argues that influence of jazz is not only for theater but performance, but it's better than it's for the society. Theater shows that feelings, identity, problems, social changes, and its important idea of this life is America start for feeling like a performance acting. All are making acting, not the real ones. All are in illusions. People were not always real. They were showing in images. Jazz is a searching for identity and feel uncertainty of pupils. Canon formation and institutional power. Later on, jazz enter in university and people studying it, and it's becoming high art. People argue which artists were remembered, which style were valuable. It's become a very stylish form later. Jazz is cultural authority shaped by power, but have some roots in it. Why jazz is still matter? Jazz is showing freedom and creativity, not only music. It skips history and culture. Jazz can change and fit new times. Main idea of this why jazz still matter. Jazz is not old and finished. It is a living and growing tradition of lifestyle. Conclusion, jazz is more than music. It shows modern life. Gatsby's novels, glam and illusions. Jazz is made and shaped over time. It's believe in culture and history more than music. Rewriting jazz is help to understand American identity better. This is my references. Thank you. If anyone have any questions, free to ask.
Hello, Nancy. So my question is, do you think the jazz age brought more positive or negative changes to American society, and why?
Yes, it's make many positive and negative, but positive are more than negative. Positive are jazz come in universities, people are studying it, and it's not only music, but it's represent the anxiety of people, and it's have some negativities. Anyone else?
So my question is, did the jazz's influence only Africa and America?
No, jazz is origin in Africa by black people for describing their anxiety and suffering. But later it's come in Chicago and New York. But at the present time in India, we feel the jazz in Bollywood and many things. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Daisy Buchan and Tom Buchan, through the Gatsby's rise and tragic falls, Switzerland critic the social inquiries, moral corruptions, and 1920s judge as relieving the wealth alone cannot guarantee acceptance of love, genuine success in American society. Here is my research problem. The judge as was marked by rapid industrial growth, urbanizations, economics prosperity in United States. The period witnessed the rise of consumer culture, luxury lifestyle, and social inequality between the rich and poor person. The tradition moral value begins shift, creating climate of materialism of moral uncertainty. In the Great Gatsby, Scott present of properties this era through the extravagant lives of the character like Tom and Daisy, whose wealth reflects the superficial glamour of this time. This Switzerland masterpiece was not created in vacuum. It was the product of wide-reaching literary educations and the emotional reality his own life. This infography explored the dual pillar of intellectual influence and person experience that define the novel depth. The myth of self-made man. The myth of the self-made man is the central concept in the American culture ideology. It promotes the belief that individual can achieve the wealth, status, and success through the hard work and ambitions determinations. According to Paul, this myth represents a powerful national narrative that celebrate achievements and social mobility. The American dream. The American dream is the central national ideal promise social and mobility, economic success, and personal happiness, hard work, and determination. In Great Gatsby, author critically examined this idea within the context and its materialistic culture in the 1920s. The Jay Gatsby appeared to embody the dream and he rise of humble origins to immense wealth, attempts to achieve his romantic goal and winning the daisy. However, the novel relieves the American dream being corrupted by wealth, social inequality, and moral emptiness in the modern American society. As the Beverly argues, the author exposed the moral failure of the American dream, showing the material success cannot provide genuine happiness and fulfillment in the life. Here is infography detailed in class, wealth, social status fiction of the Great Gatsby. The Great Gatsby called romantic competitions. The Great Gatsby illustrate the link between the high income and inequality and low generations of society mobility. Romantic competitions in the novel, Gatsby, purest of the Daisy viewed through the involuntary mad competition. Individuals compete for the partners with social and economical advantage. Symbol in the Great Gatsby present the green light. The positions of Daisy's book and symbolize hope and desire, the purest and the unattainable. For Gatsby, in present his dream, recreating the past and reflect the elusive nature in the American dream. And value of ashes, these isolate wasteland symbolizing moral decay, social neglect, dark consequence, and industrialism highlight the harsh reality, poverty of the social invisibility. Gatsby's mansion represent the wealth, illusion, and social performance. The Eye of Dr. T.J. Eichelberg. Switzerland, critic American and narrative technique. The author sharp and critic American society, highlighting in this novel the emptiness of wealth and material success, the illusion of self-made American dream, and moral decay of the super, especially in the elite. The first person narration through the Nick Carraway centered the observation distance. The culture significance of Great Gatsby. Here is literature review. Conclusion. The Great Gatsby exposed the contributions of the American dream, showing how ambitions, wealth, and desire the conflict with the society, reality, and personal life. Wealth cannot erase the class division. Gatsby's fortune cannot grant him full acceptance in society. Gatsby, purest of Daisy, highlight the fragility and personal aspirations when constrained by social norms. Here is reference. If you anyone question, you can ask me.
Bhargavi, is success in modern society is real or an illusion?
success in modern society sometimes is look like a real, but actually is illusion. In the Great Gatsby, the central character Jay Gatsby show the rich and powerful success, but in the life he feel nothingness and emptiness in his life. As Eric said, the modern man lives under the illusion. So he know that he knows what we went, but actually we know we went to in life.
So, Bhargavi, my question is how society become too money-centered and morally dark today?
Yes, modern society oftenly prioritizes wealth more than worth. So today time and past also the society become a cultural dark culture in the society. And as the Oscar Wilde said, the people know price of everything and the value of nothing. Thank you. This is from my side.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I will present about the Great Gatsby by Francis Scott Fitzgerald. So this is my research question. My research question is how does the Great Gatsby represent the relationship between dreams, illusion, and social class in American society? And hypothesis: the novel suggests the dreams of happiness and success become illusions when individuals attempt to transcend rigid social class divisions through wealth and ambition. Next, the introduction. The Gatsby, published in 1925, reflect the cultural and economic atmosphere of the Jazz Age, a period in which wealth, luxury, and social status played a dominant role in American society. The novel presents the story of Jay Gatsby, a mysterious millionaire whose life is driven by the dream of winning back Daisy Buchanan. According to literary critics, Fitzgerald uses Gatsby's story to examine the idea that dreams can become illusion when individuals attempt to overcome social barriers through wealth and ambition. That Gatsby's dream reflects the broader American dream, the belief that anyone can achieve success and happiness through hard work. Then the dreams of success and self transformation. Gatsby represent the dream of transforming one's identity through ambition and wealth. That frequently interpreted Gatsby as a symbol of American dream because he rises from a poor background to achieve extraordinary wealth, born James Gatsby's reinvent himself and construct a new identity based on ambition, determination, and imagination. Critics explain that these transformations reflect the belief that individuals in America can recreate their own destiny regardless of their origin. However, Fitzgerald complicates this idea by showing that Gatsby's success does not bring him genius fulfillment or acceptance. And next is illusion and social class conflict. Social class divisions turn Gatsby's dream into an illusion. Fitzgerald portrays three distinct social groups within the novel: the old aristocratic class, the newly rich class, and the struggling working class. The old aristocratic class represented by Tom and Daisy Buchanan, and the newly rich class represented by Gatsby, and struggling working class represented by George Wilson. Critics emphasize that these divisions illustrate the rigid hierarchies that existed in American society during the 1920s. Gatsby's wealth allows him to imitate the lifestyle of the upper class, and he cannot truly belong to that world. Daisy ultimately choose the stability and privilege of her social class rather than Gatsby's dream of romantic reunion. And next conclusion: through this story, through the story of Gatsby's Francis Scott Fitzgerald present a powerful critique of the relationship between dreams, illusion, and social class in American society. Gatsby's pursuit of wealth and love reflects the optimism associated with the American dreams. At his tragic fate reveals the limitation of that dream in a society structured by class divisions. The novel ultimately suggests that while dreams can inspire individuals to pursue success and transformation, they can also become illusions when they ignore the realities of social hierarchy and human limitation. In this way, the great Gatsby exposed the gap between the ideal vision of opportunity and the complex social realities of the modern world. So this is my reference, and thank you. So if you ask any question.
Hello, Riddhi. In what ways do social class division determine success and failure in the Great Gatsby?
Social class limits true success as old money retain power will new money lacks acceptance. Gatsby's failure that shows ambition alone cannot overcome deeply rooted class boundaries. Next.
My question.
Gatsby's dream is an illusion, not an reality, because it is based on past and realistic acceptance. His belief that wealth restore love proves false, showing the gap between reality and desire. Thank you.
Okay, so that was the last presentation. In between, we have given you some suggestions about how you can make several improvements. In the last slides also, we have seen that the reference is not according to alphabetical order. Riddhi, this is very basics that now most of you are doing, but still some of you are making the mistake that the reference list should be in alphabetical order. General observation, if we tend to give, we can see that you are able to draft proper topics. Title topics are well drafted. Research questions and hypothesis also is well presented, though it is not reaching to a proper. Hello, hello. No, you have to keep it inside that. No, let it be there, but you have to keep it inside. Otherwise, the voice will not go. That you have to keep it inside on. Let it be inside. You have removed, so the voice was not going. Yeah. Okay, so the first thing that topics are good. The research questions, arguments are good, but as suggested that you have to take help of AI to critically examine your slides by asking a question: what is wrong with the presentation? You are trying to do this. Make it very clear. The more clear you will be in the prompt, the more clear suggestions you will get from AI to improve. And then you can make your final edits accordingly. 8 minutes time you have to be careful about. Infographics are also presented well by many of you. Those who are not doing, start doing that. Most of you are doing, bringing a good infographics with textual content also. Reference list also, most of you are giving. Quality resources are there from Gestor. We suggest you to use Honors, TNF, Taylor and Francis journals also. At least one or two such articles should be there in your list. You should refer to that. And as suggested, read the part of those articles. Don't only pick up the summary of the articles, but read and bring the quote from that article. What is the argument of that article? Where is it situated, that article's argument, that you can pick up, and then you make your argument, either in support of your argument or to make any counter argument. You can use those sources, but integrate it. Integration is not happening. To prove your point, you are using some other resources. You are standing on the shoulders of some other people. So bring them properly into your arguments. Other thing that you need to improve is don't read the slides, but try to have eye contact with the audience and with camera. Both the things. Keep on looking inside camera and keep on talking with the audience. Just time and again you go to see the slides. It is not paper reading. It is presentation. Last time also we suggested there is a difference. In some seminars there are paper readings. So there people are reading papers because it is paper reading. This is not paper reading. This is presentation. And in presentation the slides are for audience, not for the speaker. Slides are for the audience, but the speakers will talk orally. They know what will come on the slides, and once that is done, They will go to next slide and start talking orally about it. And audience will try to look at some graphics, some images, some textual content. But you will be, by and large, talking orally about it. You don't have to memorize everything. So you can, if there is a quote, you can read from the slide. And then you orally speak about it. So the difference between paper reading and presentation. Here we practice presentation and not reading things. Okay, so that is fine for the day. A few of you like DIMPAL, DABHI, Jaipal, Riddhi, you need to still work hard, do some more recitation of your work. Record your voice in your mobile and listen and see that how you can improve. So 2-3 times, if you will do that, that will help you to improve your presentations also. Okay, we end today here.